going to send it right now. Here, that's up to 6.
Dear doctors, we are live. We can start now.
Good evening, everybody, from the World Academic Council of Emergency Medicine 2021 World Congress. The World Congress is being hosted in India and being relayed to all across the world. We come to the most awaited symposium of the World Congress as we celebrate women leaders in academic and clinical medicine. We have a strong panel today who's going to present their perspectives and their leadership mantras as we move towards developing a structured and a focused framework for fostering female leadership in clinical and academic medicine. I hand it over.
So thank you for joining us. My name is Veronica Tusi. I'm a professor of emergency medicine and research at William Carey University. I'm also the current scholarly activity and research director for Oak Hill Hospital's emergency medicine residency program. But I've had many hats along the way. I've been a former program director. I've been a former assistant program director. I've worked in freestandings. So I've really had the opportunity to try my hand at leadership, not just in medicine, but also in law prior to changing over after 9/11. So my leadership mantra is, at least the PG version of my leadership mantra, is if you want something done well, you find the busiest physician mom in the room, ask her to do it, then just don't expect her to attend 1,000 useless meetings trying to look important. Sit back, let her work. Okay, that's my PG mantra. My R-rated mantra is just because I don't have a literal set of balls, don't make the mistake of assuming that my figurative ones aren't made of brass. So those are my two kind of mantras that can go hand in hand. And anyone who is a physician mom or a boy mom knows we often need to rule with an iron fist. So this can be applied also in the work roles, the kind of work realm. So the way this symposium is going to work, we're going to all introduce ourselves, kind of a little bit about our backgrounds, and then our mantras, and then we'll open it up for sort of generalized discussions of where we see women leadership and how it's going to impact the practice of medicine and the art of medicine in the future, and problems that we see with it, our own personal experiences, and how it's colored our ability to do what we love, how it's affected us both on a personal and professional level, and what we really have been able, those lessons we've been able to draw from those personal experiences and what we want to bring to our future female leaders and physicians. So next up is going to be Dr. Kim Layton. Dr. Layton.
Hi, hello everybody. Thank you, Veronica. I'm a nurse, an emergency room nurse, and now mostly work with healthcare simulation. And I'm the executive director of the ICON Clinical Simulation and Innovation Center in Doha, Qatar. But I'm from the United States. My nursing background in emergency nursing and leadership, I honestly, I failed as a nursing leader. And I can tell you stories about that. But I do remember telling my father, I will never take another job where it's a leadership position. And looking back, it was just because I was young and I was new and I had no support or training for the role that I was put into. So fast forward about 30 years, and here I sit at one of the world's largest simulation centers, trying to be the executive director. I believe that now's the right time for me as a leader. So it seems to be going much better this time around. My mantras, and my staff can repeat this on command, but it's work smarter, not harder. And we do a lot of things in our daily work that just feels so hard. And so we just sit down and we're like, okay, we're making this harder than it needs to be. We have to work smarter. And then my other mantra is more of a personal one, and that is you will never find the time, you have to make the time. And as I was reflecting on that this afternoon, surrounded by piles of stuff on my table, and looking at the things that I have to do, I was realizing these are really things that I want to do. There's nothing in my pile that I have to do. I want to do them all. So in order to make that happen, you have to find the time. So that's me.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Layton. And next up is going to be Dr. Boateng.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Nana Ifia Boateng from Ghana, West Africa. I'm an emergency medicine specialist, and I'm the head of department at one of the tertiary hospitals in Accra. And I've been an emergency physician from residency 2 to specialization for the past 10 years. Emergency medicine 2 is new in Ghana. It's been here for almost 12 years now. So I was one of the first people who was pushed away from where I am now to establish an emergency department. And my mantra most of the time is, don't count the days, make the days count. Because as a mother, as a sister, as a wife, as a friend, most of the time you just want the days to go by quickly so that you are done, and then you sleep and you wake up and you start over again, and it becomes frustrating. It gets depressing most of the time. But when you know that what you are doing is counting in the world, first in your country and in the world in general, it helps you move forward and makes you do what you want to do. Another of my mantras is, that one is a bit biblical. It's from Ezra 10:4, which says, rise up, the matter belongs to you. So most of the time, this mantra has been with me since medical school. And it helps me to know that whatever it is, I'm supposed to finish what I'm supposed to do, clean it up, and do it properly and perfectly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was awesome. Next up, it's my pleasure to introduce good friend and fabulous, wonderful speaker, Dr. Lisa Moreno. So Dr. Moreno, take it away.
Thank you so much. So I'm the president of the American Academy of Emergency Medicine, and I'm also I'm a professor of emergency medicine at Louisiana State University Health Sciences Center, where I also serve as the director of the Latino Health Scholars Program, the director of research, and the director of diversity. And I have recently accepted a job as associate dean for diversity and inclusion at Brody School of Medicine. So at this stage in my career, where I have been blessed to be a leader in many, many capacities, my mantra is that unless every human being has the environment in which they can achieve their full potential, the universe is at a loss for it. And so I see my role as a senior person and a leader in emergency medicine as making other people's dreams come true and making sure that everyone reaches their potential so that the whole universe and every patient in it and every person in it can benefit. Along the way, I've had many mantras, and I like quotes from other people. And, one of the things that has been a mantra for me in my career is making certain that you say yes to everything early in your career, and that you then deliver the very best product possible and deliver it on time. This way you make yourself indispensable, and you make yourself very clearly in the presence and in the consciousness of the people that you work with. Another mantra I love is Margaret Thatcher's, which is, the best man for the job is often a woman. We don't think of women. Our unconscious bias, even as women, puts us not thinking of women. And we have to be conscious, we have to be decisive, we have to be deliberate in thinking of women and echoing women and supporting women in the jobs that are available for committees, for leadership, for awards. We have to think of women. I am also someone who follows the mantras of people, whether they be male, female, no matter who they are. And many sports figures have amazing mantras. I really, really like Kobe Bryant's Mamba philosophy, where he says, show up and put them on notice that you fully intend to be the very best that there is, that you're not a player who's showing up to just be in one final or two finals, that you're showing up so that at the end of your career, you will be regarded as one of the greatest. So those are my mantras. That's how I live my professional and my personal life. And I'm looking forward to discussing with some of these other great and impressive women some of our experiences along the way. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Moreno. Okay, next we're going to have Dr. Pia Daniel take it away and regale us with her leadership mantra and her background.
Thanks so much for having me. So I'm Pia Daniel. I am an assistant professor of emergency medicine at SUNY Downstate Medical Center in Brooklyn, New York. I'm also the director of the Disaster Medicine Fellowship. I took over the directorship of that about 4 years after I completed the fellowship. And then I also recently became the medical director of disaster medicine for the hospital. And the mantra that I chose is leaders don't choose their followers, followers choose their leaders. And I really love that because I like that it empowers the people that you're working with. I think that sometimes people get assigned a title like director of something, and they don't realize that the success of that role and what they do with it is just as dependent on how much the people underneath you believe that you deserve that role. So it's not just about getting it, but then about continuing to deserve it. So again, I think we're used to sort of empowering the leadership, but I really like the idea of empowering the whole team and empowering sort of just the belief that people have in their leaders. And so I really try to take that forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Daniel. And next up is going to be Dr. Maura Salmon.
Hello all. It's a pleasure to meet everyone. So I am Dr. Maura Salmon. I am an associate professor of emergency medicine at Temple University School of Medicine. I am also the director of global health at Temple University School of Medicine. I recently completed a mission as I was the medical director for Operation Allies Welcome, which was the removal of individuals from Afghanistan after the fall of Kabul. In addition, I'm also the chief medical officer for GRM, Global Response Management, which is a nonprofit which provides medical care and capacity building in various at-risk places across the world. Our mantra is, we go where others won't to do things that others can't. And some of the work we do there is we do refugee medicine down south of the border in Mexico. We also recently responded to the disaster in Sierra Leone with the tanker fire. And I just got back yesterday from Iraq, from the Kurdish region of Iraq, where we are working to help them build emergency medicine as a professional, independent specialty in the country. And given that so much of my work is in global health, my leadership mantras really have that sort of bend to it. One thing I say is, what's local becomes global, what's global becomes local. And another mantra I love to quote is, if you think you're too small to make a difference, you clearly haven't spent the night with a mosquito. And my leadership style, how I like to describe it is I like to describe it as very collaborative. I love to make every member of my team feel like they're valuable and feel like they are an integral part of whatever project it is that we're working on together. And for other young women who are looking to raise into their leadership positions, the single biggest piece of advice I give you is find your tribe. You really need to find your tribe of other strong women, sing their praises, and then in return, they will sing yours. And that, without a doubt, is what I feel is important as a woman in emergency medicine and global health.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Salmon. So next up is going to be Dr. Batra.
Hello, everybody. So I'm Dr. Prerna Batra. I'm a professor of pediatrics and look after pediatric emergency medicine division at University College of Medical Sciences and Associated Hospitals, Tertiary Care Hospital, Teaching Institute in New Delhi, India. So my journey in pediatric emergency medicine started in 2009 when I met Dr. Sagar Galvankar, and he was the one who introduced me to this field. At that time, actually, emergency medicine itself was in a very primitive state. You can say we used to call it as in infancy. But at that time, actually, pediatric emergency medicine was not even conceived when emergency medicine was in infancy. So I actually started liking the vision of him and was interested into it. Then I joined my fellowship program, and ultimately I was the first person in my institute who actually insisted that this branch should be a different thing, different specialty, and it should, I mean, we should try to promote this as much as possible. As far as being a woman or being a leader, if I try to collaborate two things or a branch which is really as intensive as emergency medicine, is that as a female, I always feel that emergency medicine needs some very strong people. And as a woman, I know that if I have tried to maintain the balance between my work life and my personal life, which I tried to do in my best possible way, then nobody can be as strong as me. Because in India, we have always faced this kind of problem. Still, we do have trouble in balancing both the things. So if a person, if a woman have the capability to maintain that balance, then nobody can be as strong as that lady. And definitely she can be a leader and a pioneer in a field that's like pediatric emergency medicine, which is really demanding. So my mantra is just follow your heart, try to maintain the balance. You can definitely take help of your family members, and you need support of your spouse or your family or your kids, but you should be the one who should be supporting your youngsters also. Young women here, they need support, and you can be the one who will be the leader if you support them properly and guide them in maintaining that balance. And then sky is the limit. You can do anything that you want if you are able to maintain that balance. So that is my mantra, that you do everything by heart, listen to what other people's issues are, and then you can definitely be a person whom they will look up to and will try to work to their maximum potential. You can set an example by doing the things. So that's what I try to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Batra. So next up is going to be Dr. Garg. Dr. Garg, if you could take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nidhi Garg. I'm the associate professor at Hofstra School of Medicine, and I'm also the director of research at South Shore University Hospital. It used to be called Southside Hospital. It's a 3-year-old residency. We are recruiting the 3rd year. And prior to that, I have been in several leadership roles. I have been an associate program director at LIJ, and then the combined program of LIJ, North Shore. And prior to that, I was an associate program director at New York Hospital Queens, where I actually did my training. So I started my career in emergency medicine by accident and by research. Actually, I started as a research volunteer in emergency medicine, and actually never realized until I actually became a faculty that, you know, my path was very smooth, and until my chair left. And then I realized that, oh, this is the difference when there is a women chair, you know. So I was very blessed that the first place where I've worked, there was a strong woman who was a chair and who had the vision for all the people who come to the department. So I give her a lot of credit. So my mantra has always been that choices define the destiny. So like people say, oh, this is like you are destined to do this or that. But I feel like at every point in your life, you get the choices. And what I mean by choices, it's really people who you choose to work with. So after that, I have been very careful with who is going to be my boss and whom do I work with. And that will allow you to do the things which you want to achieve in your career, is to find the right mentors. And what we as women often overlook is that mentorship is very much needed for anything in your career, especially academic career, even community medicine. You need a mentor. And most females, because mentorship has traditionally been a male herd kind of thing, you know, like they socialize more and do everything. That's not true. Mentorship is all about keeping a touch with somebody, continuing to discuss your thing. It's informal. You know, it makes me laugh when residents and interviewing candidates ask me in the interview, do you have a formal program? I'm like, it's not a license, like a mentor-mentee license, but you have to follow it. So I make my choices very discreetly, and also there is no substitute for hard work. So choose right people and work hard. That's my mantra.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Garg. So next up is going to be Dr. Zainab. Dr. Zainab. and she
Thank
may need
you.
her translator.
Hello, everybody. I work in Atatürk University Faculty of Medicine Chair, Turkey. I am Vice President of the Association Emergency Medicine Specialist. Emergency medicine is the world showcase, world's foremost, is the fine line between life and death. As a female emergency medicine leader, it is my job to fight on the front line. I continue to fight for health for my colleagues. Thank you very much. This is me. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Dr. Zeynep. So next up is going to be Dr. Dutta. Dr. Dutta.
Good evening, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank everybody. Thank you that you've taken me in. I'm a director right now at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences at Nagpur. My journey actually started with a strong career of 35 years in armed forces medical services. So I've basically been an army person rather than a civilian, like most of the crowd which is there. Well, the army itself gives us a lot of opportunities to come forward and become a leader. And I think I have been able to imbibe a lot of those qualities. I started off with being a pathologist. And then later on, I went on to do liver transplant pathology and had a very glorious career in the army. I got I was awarded the Sena Medal for the distinguished services. I would just like to say that my mantra has been that to cash on all the opportunities which come one's way and not to fret and show disregard that why did this have to happen to me. I feel that all the opportunities which come, one needs to cash on. We never know what happens in future. And I have had many prized appointments in the army itself. Well, my life has been full of, I should say I've been quite comfortable, but yes, there have been difficult moments, and we always have, the women actually have a way of doing things, and we are very hardworking and we push through our way. I think that is what it is. And the other mantra is that to keep as a leader, I would like that to keep all my subordinates very comfortable and happy with themselves rather than making things comfortable from them. So that way they also make things easier for me. This is what I would like to say. And that's it. Thank you so much. Jai Hind.
Well, thank you very much. Fantastic. And next up is going to be Dr. Samara Kuhn.
Yeah. Hello. Yeah, I'm Samidhi. I'm the Deputy Director of National Hospital Sri Lanka. That is the highest level healthcare facility in Sri Lanka. And actually, my background is I passed out as a MBBS qualified doctor, and following that, I entered into this medical administration career. So I'm holding 2 MSc degrees in community medicine as well as medical administration. In addition to that, I have the MD in medical administration and MBA as my qualifications. My main interest area is emergency medicine, emergency care. So I'm actually administrating the main emergency department in Sri Lanka, and I was instrumental in developing the accident and emergency policy for Sri Lanka. And in addition to that, I was instrumental in developing pre-hospital care services in one of our district in southern province Sri Lanka. And actually, I'm holding some other academic positions in 2 universities in Sri Lanka, that is University of Colombo and University of Sabaragamuwa. And my mantra is it's beyond the warmth of sunlight, the breast milk and the cradle. So I'm a mother of 3 children, And as many of you all mentioned, as female leaders, we have to balance our work life as well as the home front. So I feel that I'm doing both very well, and with all my home commitments, I'm going beyond that and trying to do whatever the possible administrative work to develop most of the healthcare services in Sri Lanka. And I'm applying this mantra to my workplace as well. So I'm trying to be a mother for all the workers, the team who are working with me. And so that's why I selected this mantra. It's beyond the warmth of sunlight, breast milk, and cradle. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I know we're going to have a number of people who are coming in and out of the session because they are still working clinically, or they still have administrative duties, which they are expected to perform during the course of this session. And before we even started, Dr. Galwankar posed to the group as a whole whether or not we think men would have had the same requirements or obligations. So if they had been chosen to be part of a leadership symposium, if their bosses would still expect them to be doing or multitasking and having multiple jobs simultaneously, or if it's just a vagary of us being female and expecting to be able to do it all. So we could start with that one. What do you guys think? Do you think we would be, the men are expected to still wear multiple hats while even being on an international panel? Feel free to jump in, anyone.
I doubt it. I think they would be given like an excuse and protected time to go over. And I think that's something we need to learn as a women from men. Men ask everything they want. Like I have seen in real life, like women often don't ask until they become overqualified for a job or for some, they don't negotiate. So that's something women have to start doing more and ask early. So this is a prime example.
I would definitely agree.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else have any specific thoughts on that topic?
I agree that men would say to their boss, I'm very sorry, I need to be at this other event. Women are afraid that if we say that, we're perceived as being either disorganized or unable to multitask efficiently, or that we're not putting our priorities in order and scheduling things well ahead of time. We, I think in many ways, are our own worst enemy because we expect ourselves to be able to do it all. And so therefore, when we're not doing it all, we feel like we're somehow doing things wrong.
Does the group as a whole think that matters if we have a female boss or a male boss in the role in terms of asking for what protected time, or whether or not, we're going to be on a panel, so we need to give it our full attention? Do you feel more comfortable if there's a female boss, or do you think it's the same regardless, because as women, we're still expected to carry the load?
I think it's worse.
I think
that my experiences have been worse. They're like, because mostly it's always healthcare providers, or, with me being a nurse, my bosses have been nurses too. And nurses are great at playing the victim role. And so our bosses, they're like, well, you can do it. It doesn't matter how many patients you have. It doesn't matter how many other responsibilities you have. You just make it work because that's what you're expected to do. I have found that my female leaders have been much more difficult than the men when it comes to getting the protected time.
My opinion might be a bit, it definitely depends, varies from person to person, because I still remember my first female boss. While I have, I'll give a slightly different example of what as pediatricians we have always been preaching is about breastfeeding. So it should be supported, it should be promoted and all those things. but I had a female boss who was very supportive of all these things, and she used to give these specific breaks to all the women who were at work, in at least in the premises they are staying. While I never found that kind of support from males, whatever lectures, whatever amount of world forums they are going on. So I really appreciated her that gesture, that she was doing what she wanted to do and was implementing that from her department to her institute to the university, at least, or whatever her reach was. So I think, although definitely varies from person to person, but yes, as female, I expect my boss to be more understanding than I would have a male boss.
I would argue that it's more about having bosses that clearly have a vision to empower women and diversity. So I think it's less about, do I remember a female or male boss that I got along with, but I do remember the bosses, whatever their gender is, that clearly from the outset made it known that they were about empowering people, whether it was a gender thing, whether it was a minority thing, a race thing, culture thing, and that made a really big difference in my comfort level. So I think it's less about, oh, I had one mean female leader, therefore I don't like female leaders. It's more that I remember having a leader that really, really wanted to make it as inclusive as possible. And that made such a big impact on just how our organization kind of perceived females, different cultures, and different races.
I think it has more to do with who we are than who the boss is. I agree with you on that. I think that we automatically assume that we not only are expected to do it all, but we expect ourselves to do it all. And so if we have a shift or something and someone asks us to speak at a conference or attend a committee meeting, we often as women don't even think about going to our boss and saying, I need some protected time, I need somebody to relieve me, or going to a colleague and saying, I need you to cross cover me for an hour. We just don't think about those things. So I think it has more to do with the way that we as females are acculturated and less to do with who is our boss. The other piece of that is that men are acculturated to announce their successes. So they brag better than we do. So they would go to their boss and say, I've been asked to speak on this prestigious international panel. And so that's the other piece of it, that not only are they more willing to go and ask for help or cross coverage or, protected time, but they are also much better at bragging than women are. And this is something that you see even on job interviews. If you ask a man, do you have organizational leadership experience? And he has been his son's Cub Scout leader, he will tell you, yes, I have organizational leadership experience. If you ask a woman if she's had organizational leadership experience and she's been an associate program director, she will go, well, not really. I mean, not at a very high level. And, so it's the way we're acculturated.
I would just like to say one thing, that I am in the army and I have actually had army is a male bastion sort of thing. And I have had all male bosses all throughout my career. Hardly, I think once in a while it was a female. It is just that what Dr. Lisa has just said, is the way you handle the things and the way you go on with your work and put your best foot forward, everybody would appreciate it.
Well, that's some excellent points, everybody. So this nicely segues into our next question to the group. So what are the biggest challenges you have faced as a female leader? I would say, as been mentioned by some of you before, even in your intros, one of the most difficult things that I find is that work-life balance. I'm a mom, I have 3 kids under the age of 10. And many times, many of the male leaders in particular want to have meetings during dinner hours, during hours when the kids are home from school. They like to have that face time. They like to have people and get to show, as for lack of a better term, how important they are to one another, as opposed to just sitting back and we're going to say, I'm going to get the work done. They want that face time, that interaction. And this often precludes our ability to be on some hospital committees and start going up the ranks in the traditional way to become promoted. Same thing in terms of the mentorship and the opportunities in order to meet with people outside of traditional business hours or traditional school day hours in order to build those relationships. So what would you all say is some of the biggest challenges that you have faced?
So for me from Ghana, one of my biggest challenges had got to do with being in a new place for the first time and them trying to accept emergency medicine as a specialty. So as a woman, when I got there, already there are different levels of doctors, should I say, they are residents, they are specialists, they are consultants. And you get there as a specialist and you're a woman and you're pregnant and they feel you can't do a lot of the things. So there was a meeting we went for and then one of them was just like, oh, she's a female, she's pregnant, she can't do much. And that was a bit demeaning because I was like, seriously, whatever a man can do, a woman can do better. But it had to take an extra effort. It had to take the extra communication. It had to take the extra mile for you to prove your worth. And it's been proven over and over again. The challenges are there. Sometimes it's got to do with over communication. Sometimes it's got to do with under communicating. Sometimes it's got to do with just the male not wanting to approach you because you are female and he takes his own decision because he feels that his decision will be much, much better than your decision. So there are lots of challenges that come along the way, but with time, I feel with time, it will smoothing out. Thank you.
I would have to say, I do agree with that. I've had my own personal experiences where even in the United States, and people think that the United States is maybe more progressive when it comes to traditional gender roles. Well, I've had specialists come down, and one in particular, at one institution I worked for, he was a hospitalist, and he introduced the two nurse practitioners behind him wearing full hijab as his harem because he thought it was funny to the new female doctor. Exactly. I've had other consultants who I've worked with these people for 4 years, 5 years, and they still think I'm a mid-level, a nurse practitioner or a physician assistant because I am female and therefore I'm not a physician. So it does exist even, in the United States. And I know some of you who are working abroad have other cultural norms and even more challenges in some ways, because no one thinks it's acceptable that the male hospitalist came down and said, hey, look at my female harem here, laugh, 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 laugh. And the newer generation, to their credit, would have written him up in 2 seconds flat. When I started at that institution, I was one of 6 female physicians in the entire hospital. And I knew that I would be the one written up as the disruptive provider if I didn't really watch my step. So I think sometimes, yeah.
Now, I have to agree with you completely, Dr. Tucci. And as you were saying before, as women, we are often perceived as being the mid-level provider or the nurse, and we are often addressed by our first names in a professional setting. An example I will give that happened very recently to me when I was in a leadership role. I was with a physician's assistant who has a PhD. He introduced himself as Dr. X and introduced me and the Philadelphia Health Commissioner as Mara and Cheryl to a US Senator. And I very politely reached over and said, Senator Hines, I'm Dr. Salmon. I'm the medical director. It's a pleasure to meet you. And I said nothing until later. Afterwards, we had a little conversation about titles and the importance of using them in a professional environment, because it is incredibly important. And I think this is also, Dr. Moreno, this is something you brought up, how much we do this to ourselves and how much I'll call you Lisa and you'll call me Mara. In front of others, we should be introducing ourselves and referring to each other as Dr. Moreno, Dr. Salmon. We need to own our titles and own our leadership and make it our own.
Do you think
I
that
support, I'm sorry, I support that 100%. And I think the last part of what you said is critically important, that we, even if we are friends, even if I've been to your house, you've been to my house, we've gone, you know, to clubs together, we hang out together in a professional sense, we should always be referring to each other as doctor, because you set the tone. And I can tell you that as the president of the American Academy of Emergency Medicine, I always, when we are in a meeting, refer to everyone as Dr. X. I don't care how close I've been to that person, how many years I've known them, that I am their kid's godmother. I still call them doctor during the meeting. And it's very interesting because I make note, because I'm conscious about it. And I think that's the thing, you have to be conscious about it. I will pay attention during the course of the meeting to how many times other people will refer to someone by their first name and who they choose to refer to by their first name. So often there are definitely some guys that will call everybody in the room by their first name, but there are lots and lots of guys, and unfortunately sometimes also some females, who will say Dr. Jones and Dr. Farsi and Dr. Frolickstein for the men, you know, and Lisa and Vicky for the women. And I pay attention to that. And I've also pointed that out to people in a nice way. I tell people, you know, as a diversity expert and educator, it is my responsibility to make you aware of the fact that you name women by their first names and name men by their title of doctor. And often people will go, oh my God, I didn't even realize I do that.
Do you all think that one of the reasons it's so pervasive in terms of the difference in acknowledging women's titles is because society expects us to be more approachable? And that includes even in our emergency departments. When we're working, if we introduce ourselves to the nursing staff as Dr. Moreno, Dr. Tusi, so Dr. Layton, how well does that go over with the nursing staff? Do they think, you know, oh, well, who is this woman? Why does she, you know, who does she think she is? So we often try to bridge that gap with nursing, or we feel that we have to, so we're not lording over other healthcare providers, other members of the team, in a way that men don't even have to consider, because they wouldn't think twice about it.
I would say that I want to say that I, in every job, have never actually said to a nurse to call me Nidhi. They call me Dr. Garg, and that's the tone. Because, and I will tell you why, because when I started as attending, one day I was working in the ED, and when you are South Asian, small, petite, and a female, and you're working in the ER, a family asked my charge nurse to say that they want to see the charge doctor because they think their doctor is too young. And guess who was the charge doctor? I was the one. So the nurse wasn't aware whom they were talking about it. She called me. Their faces went pale, like when they saw me as a charge doctor. So it's societal perceptions which exist, but I agree, it is what we allow. Sometimes I feel like, oh, maybe I'm not friendly enough, and that's why I don't like allow people to call me Nidhi. But no, I want to maintain a professional manner, and I don't want to lose my authority in the event of, you know, all the codes we do. And that's what happens, you know, when we have like crazy situations frequently, and not in every job, but recently in one of my courts, one of my colleagues came in and was trying to chime some orders. And then the nurse said, who is the boss here? So I said, I'm the boss. That's it. You know, so we have to set order with the nurses too. And nursing culture is also changing. There are significant number of males. The culture is changing, and we have to acknowledge the change. So things are getting better. They're not the best, but and as you said, Dr. Tuti, like when you were there were only 6 females. And now, yes, I would have written up that doctor in a hot second.
You know, Dr. Garg, you mentioned the stature, and that's also part of unconscious bias. I'm also a very small woman, a very small person. And I have actually had a patient ask the nurse to send in the cute little doctor. I mean, that was so demeaning, in my opinion. And yet these are the things that people will say. It's almost like it's painful for them to acknowledge that somebody who looks the way we look could be on the same status as their image of a male doctor. And I also find it interesting when you ask people why they choose to address you. I was at a social event. I had done grand rounds at a residency, and they had a dinner for the residents, and this one female intern, and this was just in like September. So she'd been a doctor for 2 or 3 months, and she kept referring to me by my first name and calling me by my first name. And so I asked her, what do you call the chairman of your emergency department, whose house this dinner was at? And she said, oh, Dr. Jones. I call him Dr. Jones. I said, well, then I actually outrank him in terms of academics, and I outrank him in terms of national leadership. Why do you call me by my first name? And she just looked and she goes, because you're so approachable. And so, you know, someone said that earlier, that the fact that we are approachable, you know, we're expected to be, okay, so I don't have to show her as much respect, or I don't have to, you know, I once had someone tell me they call me by my first name because I'm nice. You know, we have this whole totally crazy, again, culture about how you can address people based on how they look, or how you can address people based on how they act, or how you can address people based on what your perception of them is, as opposed to saying, respect the office, respect the office, respect the academic rank, respect the title.
I mean, I definitely do think that's right, Dr. Moreno. I mean, I have told mentees in the past that as women, unfortunately, we are put in the position often of choosing whether we're going to be the friend of the staff or they cast us as the hardcore bitch. So it's one of the two. There are some of us who try to walk the line in between maintaining our level of authority in codes and in other such serious situations. And there are problems with both perspectives. If you're the friend, yes, many of the ancillary staff and the team won't impede your abilities, won't hinder you in terms of the delivery of care. They'll get your LP kits, they'll get your patients the medication, they'll do those things, but then that level of respect may not be there. By the same token, if you're on the other side of the spectrum, then they will respect your position, but they won't like you, and it'll show up in other ways. So when we try to walk that fine line, it's the question of, you know, should we be out socializing with everybody? Are we expected to be out socializing and being approachable and being nice because we are women? And then when we don't meet those expectations, there's often we get lashed out against when we're not fitting into, you know, we're the square peg in the round hole. We have maybe more traditionally male characteristics. And I know I heard a number of people say before, like, hey, we should be negotiating, we should be tooting our own horn. Well, I'm sure many of you have come across it in the past. When we did that and we advocated for ourselves, it wasn't received well because we're women. If we were men, then that would have been expected for you to say, I'm fabulous, I'm tremendous, I've got all this experience, whether or not you actually do. And people expect women to wait until, oh yeah, you know, I have true organizational experience. I've been the CFO or the CMO. Like that's at the level when we start talking about organizational experience, instead of, well, yes, I was an assistant program director, or I've been an assistant professor for years and I helped develop this curriculum. You know, the men wouldn't think twice about it, even if they were the head of the little league team for their kids. There's some truth in that, but that's also society's expectations getting foisted upon us. And when we don't fit the mold, or we do try to negotiate for our worth, then we can actually lose jobs because we're seen as too aggressive. Although I do think that is starting to change, especially with the younger generations and more buy-in, but it's still been a problem for many of us in our careers.
So I don't know how many of the women on this panel or the women in the audience have read Sheryl Steinberg's book, Lean In, but she and I'm not sure if it's actually in the book or somewhere else, but she did a study, and she quotes a study that she did where she had a script written for an interview, a job interview, and she had a CV made up for 2 actors They were actors. So she had one of her employees conduct the interview, and one was a male actor and one was a female actor who were the persons who were interviewed, and they followed a script. So there was nothing ad lib. It was absolutely identical. Their responses to the questions were absolutely identical, and their CVs were absolutely identical. And then she asked her staff to rank them and talk about whether they thought, should we hire them? Should we hire them or not? And everyone wanted to hire the man. They said he exuded confidence. He was assertive. He took responsibility. He showed leadership categories. And about the woman, they said, she's a bitch. She's mean. She's aggressive. And so not assertive, but aggressive. And she would not be a team player. We don't want her working here. And yet this was the exact same interview.
I mean, that's
I agree.
definitely
I find that book very interesting, and I think that we constantly struggle and juggle with that. But it will change with time. I think only it's a matter of habit. Also, I think people are not habituated to see women talking, taking leadership roles, or and that's why we need more women in the leadership. We need more women as chairs. We need more women as CEOs. Even though some of us may have different experiences regarding women chair, but having women in leadership opens the door for another women, I feel.
So does the group as a whole feel that there is a leadership model that society expects that we adopt in order to attain those levels of chair, to attain the levels of CMO, like that consensus building, collaborative approach? And if we don't fit into that mantra of leadership, if we are more classically male in the top down, I'm going to just give you the plan and you're going to go with it because that's how I roll and that's my personality. Would they then be as successful as someone who adopts what women would consider as more collaborative or society?
I think it's very important to not have a one size fits all style of leadership for women. I think it is one of the problems that we have is we are told, well, if you're being collaborative, you're being too much of a woman role. If you're being aggressive, you're being too much in a male role. I think it's really important for each of us to find our own voice and find our own style and be ourselves and be confident and be competent, and for us to have more women as role models so that we can see, wow, this person is successful and she has a lot of similar personality traits to me. How can I look at how she has succeeded and meld myself in that model rather than trying to fit into any one size fits all model of leadership?
Yeah, I agree with Dr. Sam. Also, I'd like to say that as females, we have the advantage as we are more approachable. We are more, we are able to multitask better. So as leaders, when we become leaders, we do things much, much better. So I don't think that there's a thing that we have to copy. We have to accept ourselves as females for who we are, accept the role that we have been given, and use our gender to use it to make appropriate changes, transformations, wherever we find ourselves. Thank you.
So how do we get buy-in from everyone around, whether it's females on staff, males on staff? How do we get buy-in for whatever style is ours naturally as a leader for them to buy in? Because we can't be leaders if we don't have followers, right? So how do we get them to buy in?
And we have to be unique, I guess. We have, if I'm a female, I don't want to change myself. I'm happy the way I am because I think I can do many things in a better way than a man can do. But it's not that men have got an advantage or disadvantage, or we have got an advantage or disadvantage. We are unique in our own way, and every person is unique. So we really don't need to change ourselves or anything, but definitely we can be a role model or an example if we take up these leadership roles nicely and can make others follow us. There's no harm in being a little bit more approachable or a little bit, what's the harm if people find us more approachable? That can be a part of my personality. And if I use it judiciously, then it's fine. I don't find any problem with that per se. So I am what I am, and I'm okay with it. I can definitely be a leader, still being a bit more approachable or a bit more sensitive if I look. Still, I have got that role, and I can make it work. I don't find it difficult for me, at least. So it's okay, I guess.
So
I
how do
also
we
think that all of
propose?
us are in a position to really promote this culture, especially as women in leadership positions. Think about just your daily meetings. Think about when you're sitting in a committee and there's men and women and you're chairing that committee, and make sure that you are giving equal time to the female and male voices. I find a lot of time on committees, even when everybody's sort of similar level, that the male voices just tend to have be more trusted or have a little bit more authority. So we should really sort of look at how we are running our own meetings, our own departments, and make sure that we're empowering both types of voices, that we're empowering females. And then we can look at our own institutions and, as has mentioned before, simple things like, no matter your relationship, calling each other by each other's titles, politely correcting people when we notice that they're not doing it. So I think just by acting in this way, and people are, we are leaders, people are going to follow our examples. So we really should be leading by example. I think even after this talk, after this session, I'm even thinking to myself about committees that I've chaired. And I'm like, did I actually make sure that I empowered the female and male voices? And I think that I really am going to go forward with this and just make sure that in my daily life, I'm doing that, and that I'm also holding people accountable in my organization when they're not doing it in sort of a constructive way that sort of will promote it forward.
I think
Like what
that,
Dr. Daniel just said, that leadership by example. So most of the time, we as females, we like to stress that I'm the leader, I'm the leader. But what makes you the leader is what you do, not what you say. So most of the time, let our actions speak for us more than our words.
I think too that our leadership styles can be situational. So for me, I lead one way with my staff and I lead another way with senior leadership, and I lead another way somewhere in the middle. But the key, I think, to my success currently is that I explain myself all the time, because, I'm this transplanted American woman who is in a leadership position in the Middle East. And my entire team, I have a small team right now of 12, but they're from 10 different countries. Most of them are from countries where they've never been allowed to make decisions. They come to work and they do as they're told. So when I invited them to the table to help develop the strategic plan for our simulation center, they didn't know what to think about that. When I asked them to help me write policies and procedures, because they're the ones that do that work every day and they can explain it to me, they didn't understand what in the world their boss was thinking. I mean, because they've never been exposed to it. So I think there is some value in explaining your leadership strategy to people and getting their buy-in that way as well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Layton. And we've had a couple of people just join us, so just want to give them a quick chance to talk before we continue along with our discussion. So Dr. Silvana from Brazil. Dr. Silvana.
Hello, everybody. It's an honor to be here with you. I just want to talk about my experience. I work at a hospital that have almost 1,000 beds. It's a big hospital, tertiary hospital, and our general president is a woman since 2 years ago. So it's very important for us. I'm a director of a unit of an emergency unit in the emergency department. And I think the roles must be the same for women and men. And it's our president said for all the people and leaderships in the hospital. The roles must be the same for women and men. And we have worked very hard with a campaign against all kind of bullying, and it's very important. We will not tolerate any kind of bullying, and we start working hard in this campaign from at our hospital. And I think when you are a manager who works together in the patient care, the team has more admiration for our work, and thus the manager becomes a leader. So you work as like this. Be kind, be respectful, be supportive, be fair, and have the admiration of your colleagues, of your team makes you better leader. That is, make it easier your leadership. That's my thoughts based on my experience. Sorry about my English, it's not so good.
It's very good.
It's very
Thank
good.
you.
And Dr. Del Ponte, I just want to apologize because I couldn't see your full name on the screen. So I thought Silvana was your last name, not your first name. So my apologies for that, Dr. Del Ponte. So we were just discussing before you joined us about our unconscious biases. And I am not a Zoom person. So once again, my apologies for that. And we made
No
sure that the
problem.
tech and everybody.
No problem.
Well, no, we have to take ownership for that and to promote one another and make sure we're giving the same level of authority and promoting our education and our training and the same that the men do. Okay, so we do have another person who did join us, and we said at the beginning of this that there would be people coming in and out because they were having other responsibilities. And Dr. Galwankar had mentioned that Dr. Madarani joined us as well.
Hi. Yeah, Madurangi.
Okay, and of course, my apologies for that as well, because that is your first name. Okay, I am so sorry because we come from so many different places, and some of the last, so for example, Silvana can be a last name in where my family's from in Italy. So it's not that unusual to see certain things. So my apologies once again for calling you Dr. First name.
All right. It's really, really interesting to join this forum, actually. I'm from Sri Lanka, where I'm one of first emergency physicians in Sri Lanka. So we have faced lots of barriers and problems when we establishing the emergency medicine in our country. But it was like a very fast growing field in our country. And but it doesn't have sort of a smooth pathway anyhow. So as women, actually, that's we so that's the initial part of our training, that initial part of our the recruitment of the doctors. We had less female doctors, but with time there was a huge replacement of these male doctors from the female, and since a lot of enthusiasm towards emergency medicine by female doctors. So that's a very good way of good trend, actually, because the females believe that they can do a better way of, that they can perform well and get lots of responsibilities. And we know that emergency medicine is kind of a very stressful and lots of challenges. So I think that women are the best people to face challenges, and they can face challenges better than men, because as one of doctor mentioned that previously, that regarding that we are a bit of a multi-talented, so especially that we have to balance the family and everything. So that's a good way that we can capable of doing lots of things to this field. And the other thing is, as sorry, the women that as a leaders of this field, We can be an example for our followers, the other female doctors who are coming to this field. So that will encourage them to involve more and more. And the positive way that we can do the things, and how we face the barriers, and then how they can overcome the barriers. So I mean that in problem wisely, it may not be like every field as a woman we are facing so many issues, and I totally agreed with the previous discussions done by lots of doctors regarding that's how we face when we go into the unit with the nurses and the other doctors, how they introduce us. And there, I mean, that's, I can see that's irrespective of which country you're from, which society you are from, you are facing the same common thing. So but we have seen that lots of alliances, organizations build up for this emergency medicine field to develop the field. But we have seen less organizations or alliances which incorporate to raise a voice about women in emergency medicine, and how they can incorporate together different parts of the world, and how they can help each other. So I think it's better if we can initiate that sort of thing from this forum. That would be a very good achievement, I feel so.
Perfect. That actually beautifully segues into one of the next questions I was going to pose to the group, but it's sort of, how do we propose to engage and build up the next generation of female leaders, those trainees, the students, and kind of one another? Some of the comments on the chat between all of the individual members of the panel have said that branding is one of the biggest problems for us. Branding and shouting our accomplishments to the rooftops without being perceived in a negative light. And that in many ways we can do that for one another, and we can promote each other's accomplishments in some ways more effectively than we can do our own. So how do we also bring in this next group and keep them engaged and energized and willing to take on the world and help change both emergency medicine and medicine as a whole? What do y'all think?
Well, I feel that we can share our experiences, and we have lots of experienced women in our field, specialty, and who have just like carry on their task, just like similar to the male gender. So we get the experience each other, and then the other thing is that we should, I mean that rather than sharing this experience and the knowledge, we may have to just continue that sort of a discussions continuously. Then only that others can understand, others can, I mean that to keep in their mind that these are the things that the women in the emergency medicine doing, and the difficulties they are facing. And so we should have to continuously raise that voice. What I feel is that's the one way that we can contribute.
Anyone else have thoughts on how to engage?
I think it's important to amplify the contributions of other women. I noticed, and I'm not the only one, this is noticed by many female leaders, that when you are at a meeting, a woman will say something and nobody will make a comment, and then a man will say something and he repeats almost exactly what the woman said a few minutes later, and everybody jumps on it. And I think it's our responsibility to amplify the woman and say, yes, Dr. Male, that's exactly what Dr. Female said a few minutes ago. And, we support that. So I think we absolutely, and let's even be more proactive and jump on it the minute a woman gives a good idea. Dr. Salmon talked about that. We need to sing each other's praises. The minute a woman brings up a good idea at a meeting, amplify her, echo her, jump on it and say, yes, that's a brilliant idea. Even if that's all you have to say. The other thing I think we need to teach our junior physicians is to brag better, as I said earlier. And I'm going to also add apologize less. And I don't mean to jump on anybody, but Dr. Del Ponte, you apologized for your English. And that's because you have been taught that English is the language of medicine and you should be speaking it perfectly. I live in a country, the United States, where people are monoglots. They speak one language and almost only one language. And that's true in many English-speaking countries, in Australia, in New Zealand, in England, in Ireland. Most people are monoglots. You are probably a polyglot. You speak English and you speak Portuguese, and you may also speak Spanish, and you may also speak Italian, and yet you apologize to us that you don't speak perfect English. Probably the people at this table can't speak any Brazilian or any Portuguese, rather. And so my point is, we need to apologize less. Usually this language example carries into everything else. Oh, I'm sorry that I didn't do that A-line perfectly. Well, you know, you can do an A-line, you can do an ultrasound, you can do a subclavian line, you can do a million other things. So why do you apologize that you can't do one thing perfectly? You are the CEO and the CFO and the CMO of your family, as well as holding a full-time job, as well as being a mentor to residents and medical students. In most cases, you're doing a lot more than any man. And this current studies show that the domestic responsibilities of female physicians far exceed that of their spouses, even when their spouse is a male physician or another female physician, but even a physician. And so we have to brag better and apologize less, and then amplify each other's opinions, amplify each other's thoughts, amplify each other's accomplishments.
Thank you, Dr.
I couldn't
Moreno.
agree more, Dr. Moreno.
Thank you.
That is one of the single things that I tell my female residents over and over and over is, please stop apologizing for your own success. Please stop apologizing for interrupting someone. Sometimes people speak over each other. It happens. Please stop apologizing for being who you are. Be proud of yourself, own yourself, and always, always, always find another woman that you work with, that you will be her champion, she will be your champion. And always, always amplify. Someone was speaking earlier about being in a conference with men and women, and when a man speaks up, people answer. I believe that was actually you, Dr. Moreno, as well. One of the things I do is I turn to the other women in the room who may not have spoken and say, what are your thoughts on this? What do you think about this? Because particularly our younger physicians may not yet have gained that confidence to speak up. They need to sometimes be given that door to be opened, to speak up, and ask them what they think. And then when they share, amplify it.
So I want to augment here and reiterate what Dr. Sandel had said here. And I adopted this from the Lenient book by Sheryl Sandberg. Start sitting in the front of the table in the conference or in a meeting. Don't, we typically go and try to find the chair, like if there are two circles, we'll sit in the outer circle. Start sitting in the inner circle. You deserve it. And the world is ours.
Along with promoting one another, and I think that is a fabulous goal for the next year, just, to keep the group chat and just also tell everyone what you're up to, what you're doing, so we can toot your horns on top of you being able to do it yourselves. I would like to suggest that for next year's Women Leadership symposium or conference, that we try to bring some of our trainees and we try to show them and let them introduce to one another, because the new generations have a different way and a different perspective sometimes from how they're going to approach things and how they're going to, for lack of a better term, force the work-life balance that many of us have struggled with, whether it's because society conditioned us not to complain as much because it'd be ill-perceived. And they're like, well, you don't like it, we'll just walk out. And some of that fire and that passion, could be a beautiful thing if they are supported and not beaten down. And that was one of the things my mentor, Tracy Stanson, always did an excellent job trying to do. Tracy, she's my girl. I love Dr. Sanson. So for those of you who don't know her personally, Dr. Sanson is an amazing, tremendous physician, person, human being, mother, like you name it, she's worn every hat in the book. And Dr. Sanson's goal always was very much to bring up women who are on the rungs beneath her further up the chain from her personal experiences, because her generation often hit a certain wall. And it was okay, if you did get to that position of leadership, well, you're the one. We're doing a quota. There's the woman. You've now checked that box and no more women are going to be allowed up. Well, that's ridiculous. If you're the most qualified person for the position, it shouldn't make a difference what your gender or race or ethnicity, religion, fill in the blank way to separate you from the crowd is. It should be, can you do the job? Do you have the skill set? Are you what the company or group needs? And that is the bottom line, what it should be. And in many respects, she gave us permission to embrace that and embrace breaking through those glass ceilings and embrace, because she has so much difficulty with women in her own times or women who were just slightly above her, because they would be reluctant to assist other women in the field, thinking that if I help you, then there won't be enough room for me at the table. Well, that needs to get thrown out with the old way of thinking. And now we need to have a lot more seats available for our female colleagues and sort of change the perspectives of, and I think we've been going along, we've been doing that, but we probably could do an even better job of promoting one another and promoting the juniors in the room and allowing them to realize that, no, you don't have to have 5,000 chest tubes to be proficient in chest tubes. Many of our female trainees feel that way. They will feel like they need to do more than they have to in order to be as good as the men. And the men do one chest tube and they're like, well, fantastic, I'm great at this, let's move on. And the women are like, okay, cowboy, like whatever. But, that's that innate, whether it's society conditioning, we want to be the best and we're used to being the best, because in order to get into medical school, we had to be the best. In order to be the best in sciences, we had to be the best, because society didn't expect women to fill that role. And I think it's getting a little bit better as we continue on, but we still have room to go. And I would love to see some trainees at this conference next year to bring their suggestions on how we can best help them as well. How can we help foster and develop their future academic careers or their community careers, and making a difference in leadership in the hospital in organizational levels, because they'll be taking care of us when it's our time. So I just wanted to put that gauntlet out there. So let's bring some of the young blood with us next year. And not that we're all, okay, not that any of us are old, but for the kids in the room. I know I saw a little thumbs up there. Because yes, I do have gray hair, and I will say I've stopped getting as many comments about, like you had said, Dr. Garg, when you were the super petite, young appearing. I haven't had that happen to me in years. And I blame my children for this, because I have let my gray hair show now. And of course, it also reduces the likelihood of patients thinking I'm the nurse as well. So there are benefits, I guess, with age. And I won't wear scrubs either. That's been another rule I've taught some of my female trainees. I show up in real clothing in the ER because it reduces the likelihood of being confused with other roles. So there are little tricks that I've had, and hopefully that won't be necessary as our junior faculty and our junior trainees come into their own and in their own leadership mantras and models. Anyone have any closing thoughts or suggestions or desires for next year, or work that needs to be done that we should collaborate on together?
We should do a research committee from this forum.
Well, we do have a lot of research directors in the room. That's true. And I kind of smiled at that, because I went into research in part in order to check those boxes for promotion, because I was told, you need to have a certain number of publications in order to get promoted to professor. And a lot of times the female faculty would fall into these roles of the committee work and the things that weren't traditionally valued by the universities. So what did they value? They valued first author publications, and they valued these NIH grants and how much money you're going to bring in, and which is a little bit harder sometimes for us to do when we're running 8 million hats and we have a whole second shift of work when we get home with the kids. So I tried to pivot and do what I do, and having been a lawyer, writing and speaking comes a little bit easier to me than to some. So it's sort of how I fell into that. But I think it's a brilliant idea, Dr. Garg. We can research it and start finding out ways and doing more to promote one another, and ways in which we can increase the number of female chairs across the world, because it is still very much a problem when we have to announce, oh, there's now a brand, like the first African-American female chair in the United States of emergency medicine. That just happened. Really? Okay. It's great that it did, but why didn't it happen a decade ago, 2 decades ago?
Yeah.
Anyway, that's just my 2 cents.
Dr. Veronica, I was honored to attend this session. I learned a lot from your experience. I want to add a small point before closing. The geography of my country, Turkey, is a challenging one in terms of social, economic, and cultural aspects. Conflicts, wars, migration, destruction. In addition, social inequality does not only affect women. In this difficult condition, I am proud to be a woman leader, and also as a pioneering association in emergency medicine. We make a lot of organization every year, including congress, courses, symposium, international, national, ATLS, Sonnet School, ACLS. As a woman, I will never give up promoting use as woman in all these events. Finally, thank you again for your inviting me, and I hope one day we will be face to face. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else have some last parting thoughts? Want to give everyone their opportunity to close with their last thoughts and take home points.
It's been a great discussion. And what I would say is, in my country, Ghana, where I started as one of the first emergency physicians in Accra, one of the things I decided to do, because working in the emergency department, it's tiring, it's depressing, there's always burnout. I decided to do things to make it fun. So we held our first emergency week 2 years ago, and we did one last year as well. And there are things that we incorporate both the staff and the patients and their relatives as well, just to educate them on health matters, what happens in the hospital. It was sort of a PR stunt, but it was one of the things that changed the course of the emergency department in my setting. So as we've always been saying, as females, we have the advantage of being multitaskers. We have the advantage of being people who know how to plan things. We know how to put things in order and to line up with certain things to help us move forward. And as we are doing it, as Dr. Salmon said, we should always have mentors with us along the way. We can have female mentors, we can have male mentors, we can even have residents as our mentors. But when we are done, whatever effects that we want to have felt in our organization should be felt, and it should push us to move and help other people better. Thank you.
That was beautiful, Dr. Boateng, very beautiful. I do try to tell my mentees to seek as many mentors as possible in life. It's great when you can find female mentors who can help bring you along on your path and your journey. I don't want to discount or not give the adequate due to our male mentors as well, and they're important in our fight for equality and recognition in the field of medicine and in society as a whole as well. So we owe them for their efforts as well. So I do appreciate the mentors. I mean, I often tell my residents and students to go specifically, regardless of gender, to find the mentors who are like them in personality and in style, and who are just further along in their career, and they'll show you the kind of missteps you might make along the early path of your career because they've done it themselves, and now they're a little bit older and wiser, and they can kind of help you avoid it. And then also find those mentors who are diametrically opposed to you in style and personality. Because if you're truly open to it, they will show you how you're going to irritate and annoy your colleagues and things that you can do to maybe mitigate that a little bit. Because at the end of the day, emergency medicine in particular is a team sport. So we can really take off as leaders when we recognize, I didn't realize I was annoying you by doing XYZ when it's totally within my control to fix. Obviously, I'm not going to do a complete facelift of my personality, but certain little minor tweaks you can do if it's really making a difference in your working relationship. And so long as you're open to that, people will tell you if we don't get defensive and we don't take it personally, and then it doesn't become a passive aggressive thing. I mean, there's always a but with that whenever people are giving you feedback, right? And we've all seen it even amongst our trainees. Sometimes you're trying to give effective feedback and it's taken badly. So I think one of the best things to becoming a better person in a better position is to always learn from everyone around you, learn from your, like, I love that you said, learn from the residents. Residents can be your mentors too, because they have techniques and they have skills and they come from different backgrounds and they have had different jobs in some instances before they went into medicine. So they may very well be able to help us develop aspects of our own leadership or improve aspects. So I think that's really fantastic, which is one reason why I'd love to bring some of the trainees in, not just what we can give them, but what they might be able to offer to others as well from their various backgrounds. Anyone else have any parting thoughts before we go and everyone gets back to work or on their Saturdays?
Yeah, I want to add one more thing that, we talked about that, what will the next symposium that in the next year, what we should do, and we should have to incorporate lots of future leaders. So that's a very good thing, because we have to show that how we propagate as the leaders in the emergency medicine. And so then I think we have to show some sort of steps, and how, after this discussion, how we should achieve that thing. I mean, that just having a rather than a discussion, and how we can show that's the involvement of the this women leaders in emergency medicine, and what's their contribution, and what actually can gain from their capabilities, like in research wise. That's we know that's lots of research are there, but most of the researchers, especially the interventional researchers, they are actually done by lots of male genders, but there's very less female participation. So we should have to encourage that, and we should have to find out what could be the barriers to not to come for that sort of leading or challenging setup, and we should have to identify, and then we have to get some steps to improve that things, and then only that we can show that what females can achieve in different ways as the leaders in this specialty. That what I personally believe that's could be one way that we can show, and we can actually overcome this gender discrimination as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just sent it out over the chat, maybe for everyone to think about when we finish this panel discussion up, and then for future planning purposes, because as we mentioned, women are badass multitaskers. I mean, everyone in the group certainly is wearing multiple hats. And then planning for next year's conference, maybe we could develop a leadership track, a leadership development track for some of the junior faculty in the different areas. So if research is going to be a focus of your career, or even if it's not, and you want to investigate it, if you're thinking about academics, you may need to have this depending on what your university requirements are. How do you get into it? Because you haven't had that exposure before. Maybe you're the first person in your family who ever went to medical school, so you don't know. Same thing with public speaking. Not everyone is comfortable getting up in front of a group. How can we help you develop those skill sets, without, maybe with or without taking propranolol and giving speeches, other things for how do you do the teaching sessions, and, you want to be an academic, and maybe doing just a basic lecture to a smaller group is more palatable, or a seminar or a simulation session. Like, we all come from many backgrounds that we can offer of, this is how I would help you develop this skill set for people who are interested. So perhaps we can have a hand in coming up with something, novel for around the world for people who want to send their trainees to kind of like a leadership development track, whether it's a chief resident or even junior residents or junior faculty, things that might be developed in the next, year, 2 years, 5 years, and, continue to go on. So for the off-channel discussions to come. Okay. All right. And with that, I think, unless anyone has any last thoughts, I want to thank everybody for joining us.
I have one last thought.
Perfect. Dr. Salmon, take it away.
Do what you love and be yourself and own who you are. Own your own successes, own your passions. And if you do that, others will respect you. They will.
Perfect. Thank you so much, all. So Dr.
you very much.
Galwanker.
Thank you. That was phenomenal. And I must end today's session by a thought which always comes to my mind, that we have to migrate from being conditioned to take things for granted, to being cautious, to not take things for granted, and then be conscious that we need to take everybody together and go ahead. So this journey from being conditioned to being cautious to being conscious is the one we all have to cover together. And I'm so proud of myself that I could hear all of you on one platform. And I think this mission will grow together. Thank you very much. Have a great weekend. Merry Christmas to all of you. And thanks for coming along. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Thank you.
So everyone in the halls, good night. We'll see you all tomorrow. Bye.